April 17th, 2024, somewhere in South Chesterfield, Virginia. A laptop sits open. The cursor blinks. An email arrives from Truist Financial Corporation. Corporate. Polite. Routine. They want their company computer back. The woman reading that email had been fired 2 days earlier. She knew what was on that laptop, she knew what it could prove, and she knew that handing it over meant everything unraveling. The accounts, the transfers, the money she had been quietly bleeding out of strangers for over a year. So she made a decision. She typed 4 words. Sorry to inform you. Then she told them she was dead. Not metaphorically, not as a joke. Ahshah Dior Martin, 35, wrote back to her former employer and informed them, coldly, in the third person, that the woman they were looking for had passed away. She hit send, and then she waited. It was one of the most audacious moves in a case already full of them. A woman who had stolen nearly $200,000 from at least 70 people, businesses, nonprofits, and places of worship, and whose answer to being caught was to simply cease to exist. But here's the thing about faking your own death to avoid a federal investigation. It doesn't work. To understand how this happened, you have to understand what Ahshah Martin was and what she was given. She worked at Truist Financial Corporation, one of the largest banks in the United States, a company built on the word trust, with that word baked directly into its name. And she had access. Not limited access, not read-only access. She had the kind of deep operational access that a functioning bank employee needs to do their job. Account information, routing numbers, transaction systems, the architecture of people's financial lives laid out in front of her like a map. For a long time, she used it the way she was supposed to. Then, in 2023, something changed. Investigators would later document exactly when the fraud began, exactly how it worked, and when they laid it all out, the method was almost breathtaking in its simplicity. Martin didn't need to hack anything. She didn't need stolen passwords or sophisticated malware. She just logged in, the same way she always did. And then she started taking. She pulled account information on Truist customers, real people, real businesses, and she initiated fraudulent debits and withdrawals, moving money out of their account and into her own control. The mechanism she used most often was particularly cynical. She routed payments through a child support processing system. Think about that, a platform designed to make sure children receive financial support. Martin used it as a personal ATM. She essentially wrote herself checks, disguised as child support payments, funded by accounts that had no idea any of this was happening. The money moved quietly, automatically, invisibly, and it kept moving for months. Here's what makes this case different from a typical embezzlement story. Most financial fraud targets institutions, corporations with compliance departments and insurance policies and legal teams on retainer, entities that can absorb a hit. Martin didn't just target those, she targeted churches, she targeted a children's museum, she targeted an eye tissue bank, a nonprofit that preserves human eye tissue for transplant patients who need to see again. She targeted the North Carolina wing of the Civil Air Patrol, a volunteer organization, people who spend their own time on search and rescue missions. She targeted a small business that made customized holsters, a manufacturing company, a construction firm, 70 accounts, 70 victims, each one unaware, each one going about their lives while money quietly disappeared from their accounts. And what did she do with it? Cosmetics, clothing, travel, restaurants, a hookah bar, $195,000. Gone. Not invested, not hidden offshore. Spent on things she wanted, on a lifestyle funded entirely by people who never consented to fund it, including congregations trying to keep the lights on and volunteers trying to find missing people in the dark. The audacity is almost impossible to process. But here's what's even more troubling. Nobody caught it for over a year. April 15th, 2024, Truist Financial Corporation terminated Ahshah Dior Martin. The investigation had caught up. The access was revoked. The employment was over. But there was a problem. Martin still had the laptop, and whatever was on that computer, whatever logs, whatever trails, whatever digital fingerprints had accumulated over more than a year of fraud, was still in her possession. Truist reached out. They needed the device back. Standard procedure. A routine request. Martin didn't ignore it. She did something far more calculated. 2 days after her termination, she replied to the email, and in that reply, she referred to herself in the third person, as if someone else had picked up her phone, opened her inbox, and was delivering tragic news on her behalf. Sorry to inform you, she has passed away. 4 words. A ghost. She was betting that Truist would close the ticket, mark the laptop as unrecoverable. move on, and that whatever evidence lived on that hard drive would stay buried with the woman who had allegedly died. It was brazen, it was desperate, and it was the moment that turned a financial crime into something almost theatrical. The problem for her is that federal investigators don't close tickets because someone sends a suspicious death notice 2 days after termination. They open new ones. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's Office of the Inspector General started pulling threads. The FDICOIG exists precisely for moments like this, when someone on the inside of the financial system turns it against the people it's supposed to protect, when trust becomes a weapon. What they found, documented in federal court filings, was methodical and damning. Transaction records, account access logs, the child support payment processor, 70 accounts, $195,000, and one very much alive woman in South Chesterfield, Virginia. Ahshah Dior Martin was charged. She appeared before U.S. District Judge Roderick C. Young in the Eastern District of Virginia, and then, facing the full weight of the evidence assembled against her, she pled guilty. Embezzlement. False statements to a financial institution. The fake death certificate she never filed couldn't protect her. The laptop she never returned couldn't disappear. The money she spent on clothing and dinners and cosmetics couldn't be unspent. She faces up to 30 years in federal prison. Sentencing is scheduled for November 20th. It's easy to look at this case and focus on the theatrics, the death hoax, the audacity, the sheer nerve of a person who, cornered, decided to vanish on paper. But strip away the drama and what you're left with is something quieter and more disturbing. A person was trusted, not in a vague, philosophical sense, literally trusted, given the passwords, the access, the systems, the responsibility that comes with working inside the machinery of someone else's money. And for over a year, she used that trust as a tool of extraction against churches, against children's charities, against people who gave their time to search for the lost. Institutions rarely collapse all at once. They fail one ignored warning at a time. And fraud like this, quiet, internal, patient, is the kind that hides in plain sight precisely because the person committing it looks exactly like someone who isn't. Ahshah Martin didn't break into Truist. She walked through the front door. She sat at her desk. She logged in, and then, for more than a year, she made herself invisible, right up until the moment she tried to make herself dead.